top story at 7:30. The iPad probe against me is irregular, compromised and malicious. Embattled SAPC, or rather SAP's boss, Phahlane, has lashed out at private investigator Paul O'Sullivan for his undue involvement in the investigations against him. When confronted with queries, iPad remained silent and O'Sullivan did not provide any answers, indulging in name-calling instead. Here's a report.
Is forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan coaching witnesses in the iPad probe against acting National Police Commissioner Phahlane. Emails in possession of the New Age, a publication from the same group as ANN7, show that O'Sullivan drafted statements to be submitted by Sable Hills estate manager Chris Euster in probe into Phahlane's house.
I have indeed seen the email exchanges. What continues to be a worrying factor is the fact that whatever is in IP's possession is landing with him and very quickly with the media.
The private investigator has failed to answer questions regarding his dubious role in the process. What he chose to do instead was to viciously attack ANN7 staff for seeking answers.
They managed to acquire these emails that have gone back and forth between Paul O'Sullivan and the estate manager, Chris Euster. So where I've just mentioned, asked him to explain the emails, or even to ask him about, whether or not, those are his emails, that he sent it to Chris. But he gave a very definitive answer saying, I commented already. What's the point in responding to a criminal like Phahlane and his Zupta appointees? Remember, the question was all about Paul O'Sullivan, which is himself. It was about acting National Commissioner Phahlane as well as the estate manager. We don't know where Zuma and the Guptas came in from. Then he went on saying the sooner Zuma and his accomplices are in prison, it's the better, and I will do what I can to send them there.
The police watchdog has chosen to maintain silence on the issue of leaked emails. Phahlane says he is the victim of a witch hunt.
It's an irregular, compromised investigation with malicious intent. I'm not going to stop the investigation. I think it is important that the truth comes to the fore.
As the war of attrition continues, can the iPad justify the seemingly extra-constitutional role being played by the private investigator? Bureau Report, ANN7.
Now, because the debate centers around investigator or forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan, due courtesy was then extended for him to join us on the panel at 2 p.m. or 11 minutes after 2 p.m. Our guest relations team sent an email requesting for an interview with Paul O'Sullivan, of which he responded by saying, yes, you can send your camera crew, you can send a camera to my office. And that was at 11 minutes after 2. In fact, the communication started much earlier than that. At about 1:45, we sent an email saying, good day, Mr. O'Sullivan. Hope this mail finds you well. This is us at ANN7 trying to get to the bottom of this iPad and Phahlane issue involving yourself as well. And we wanted to know what your role is in the iPad probe and whether you can be trusted for that matter. That is the focus of the debate, of which Paul O'Sullivan responded. Now, we wasted a lot of resources and time, and Hashim Poza, our correspondent, went to the office today. Hashim, thanks so much for joining us. Really a waste of time, isn't it just? So what happened when you got to Paul O'Sullivan's offices?
Cindy, thank you. As I stand here next to you, I just saw that I received the letter on around 2 o'clock to go and visit his office, and then he chased away from that office. He said he doesn't have an appointment with the ANN7. Therefore, we are not allowed to be in his place, and we must take our equipment and go back to the office.
All right, but now when you showed him the confirmation that he sent, with his letterhead and signature, Paul O'Sullivan and Associates, etc., what was his response?
He said to me, our correspondents, they don't know how to read. And then I showed him, he agreed to us to come to his office, and then he said, no, please can you go out? And then from there, after a few minutes, the security guys, they came and then they asked us, what do we want here next to his house?
Hashim, we saw with Kelden Ogmu, when she also interviewed O'Sullivan, that there had been an exchange of vulgar and even abusive language, you know, in the sense that he's not going to speak to criminals, brought in the whole Supta thing. But it's, for me, very interesting because we do have the evidence that he sent confirmation that he would now deny and say he doesn't have an appointment. What does one make of this kind of turnaround from Mr. O'Sullivan, especially when you told him that there was confirmation? Did you at all feel threatened, or did you feel, especially with the security present there, were you threatened?
First of all, he said to me he's not free to talk to us, and then also he's going to be busy with his dinner, and then we are disturbing him for eating dinner. Therefore, we must go away. When security come to us, and then I just show the security my press card that I'm just came here for interview. He said, please, can you go out? So it's where we went out, and then to me, as I have a letter of confirmation showing that this thing is emailed from the man, but he refused to talk to us. I don't know what can we do with that.
All right, we appreciate it. I suppose you get to go home early now. Otherwise, you'd be stuck with a grumpy Paul O'Sullivan. But thanks indeed for your efforts. And that's Hashim Poza, our correspondent, who went to Paul O'Sullivan's home today. It's really disappointing. That's why, in his honor, we'll keep the chair open. Hopefully, he'll change his mind. Because they are, Sviso, welcome again and good evening. And you at home are welcome to give us a call as well. Incriminating evidence of how Paul O'Sullivan, in this Khomotso Phahlane case, had tried to coach and tutor, literally almost writing a draft script of what the estate manager ought to say in the affidavit implicating Lieutenant General Phahlane. So, again, he retracts the fact that we confirmed that we are going to come to his office. What do you make of this kind of character?
Well, I'm delighted that I was delighted that Mr. O'Sullivan was going to be on the panel with us tonight, and so I'm saddened that he will not be here. It would have been really interesting to hear his view. I was particularly interested in hearing what the issue between him and the acting police commissioner is. At first, on hearing this at first glance, from me and from his appearance and speech, it was that the issue was not a direct conflict. Leaders in this country are appeased or are considered to be corrupt, you know, because they're black. Mr. Phahlane, I think, has released statements to say he bought the sound instruments, the DVDs and all that he bought in his home. They cost an amount of 80,000 rand. We really sat with some colleagues and discussed how possible that was. But if you put an expensive plasma TV in your lounge and then 2 TVs in the kids' bedrooms and 1 big one in yours, and to surround sound, that can go into any price. But that is his constitutional right to spend his money, no matter how he feels. Mr. O'Sullivan is a great investigator. I think when you can put a man like Kretcher behind bars, then you assume to be a deputy savior, perhaps, of the world. And so he's got a Superman type of ambience about him, a Superman type of aura, and perhaps a belief. I mean, this is a man who put Mr. Jackie Selebe behind bars, and it would be good for his profile, immemorial, if he were to do that with Mr. Khomotso Phahlane. And so if you live in that realm politically, if you live where you've dealt with great men such as this, you won't lower yourself and put small men who are caught shoplifting at ShopRite behind bars, because that's not in his level, that's out of his league. And so he would have to go for presidents, if he can't find anything, maybe some ministers, and maybe another police commissioner. That is the sort of trend. He did not find anything with Mr. Phahlane, but I believe he's continuing to dig, because of a profile that he has presented for himself. He does not work alone. I believe from information received, he works with various organizations from the world, things like the CIA. He's not alone in this. He's very well connected. And so this is a scare tactic that he uses, even to get information and to jail people.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to pose this question, that is he a forensic investigator or one that dabbles as a politician? He's been quoted in the Mail and Guardian last year that he was going to go to London and advocate for a political sanction against what he calls a corrupt government that has been taken over by the Zupta brigade, as it were. So as an investigator, there surely has to be boundaries and parameters as to how far your own duties and responsibilities extend in order to allow the authorities to then further investigate. Case in point, him going to the estate manager, essentially giving him a letter not to sign per se, but leaving just the essential gaps where the manager would either put a date or put a name, but the original draft being compiled by Paul O'Sullivan. You don't think he's just overstepped his boundaries, albeit that he's got this anti-corruption crusade banner on his head? Well,
Mr. O'Sullivan now works with Mr. McBride. And I mean, this is a very, very big twosome. Mr. McBride's got quite a profile of his own. He comes, from the MK, not beloved of white people, even in this country. He blew up a restaurant in Durban in the apartheid era. So now they've sort of created a tag team, an anti-corruption tag team. Let me begin by saying, Cindy, that in the highest regard, we should condemn the unfair treatment and the insult or assault to members of the press. Journalists are just doing their jobs. They just write the stories, they don't make them. And if they are just trying to get a story, it is wrong for one to insult them and to call them stupid or to call them agents. If you don't want to talk to them, just don't. But they are just doing their job. That's what these young people are trained to do. They went to school to write and to find stories, and that's what they should do. And so there's been a lot of insult from Mr. O'Sullivan, and we want to condemn that in the highest in the strongest possible terms. Mr. O'Sullivan went out into London and said he was going to tell the world that the ANC government is corrupt, that President Zuma is captured, that the South African government essentially is even worse than apartheid. He was going to call the world to sanction South Africa. Those sanctions would start with the economy. We would not have trade partners. They wouldn't invest in the country. There would be sanctions on sport and recreation and tourism. And so those are very serious suggestions to make. That is lingering on the line of treason. And so he said he was going to go into the world and do that. He even made such a statement and said he's had a very high-profile meeting, a very high-level secret meeting where, the Zupta gang was discussed and there was $50 million on the table, and he would use that, to come and deal, with the president and his friends. So this is, very, very political. He made those statements. There was no secret meeting. Nothing has materialized even now. But it shows sort of a caliber of a man who's got a very dark psychosis. A man with a very dark mind and a political narrative that is hidden behind investigation. Sure, he's an investigator. We don't know where he gets his details from or where he gets his sources or for his information from. But it's marred in a lot of sort of dungeon details, when he wants to bring back the days of apartheid and have the country sanction South Africa and nobody even knows why. So he's not a person one wants to cross, perhaps. Sometimes I'm worried for McBride because when this tag team alliance doesn't work, when this new investigative marriage sort of collapses, I don't know who's going to shoot who first. So it's a very dingy, existence to find yourself in. And so we worry because these investigations that are brought on the table are not done so on merit. And we feel they're not done on on the basis of safety and security towards South Africa. A man who says he's going to put South Africa on sanctions, is going to tell investors to withdraw from this country, doesn't have this country's best interest at heart. So who are you protecting when you investigate people and claim to be investigating drug lords? So it's not about drugs, it's about ill-gotten wealth, and it's about political scoring. I think as politicians, what we should be looking at is who in fact has sent Paul O'Sullivan, who is paying Paul O'Sullivan, who are those funders that are giving him money to collapse this economy, who are those people who have assigned him to come and deal with President Zuma. I think that's the fair question.
All right, maybe I almost said Maskin. Maybe advocates are here. Omar, constitutional lawyer, can expand on that as to how a supposedly independent forensic investigator can be trusted when he says things like he was in a secret meeting where $20 million was raised in order to deal with what he terms a corrupt government, with the Zupta criminals. Just based on that alone, that for me is somebody who doesn't have the best interests of the country at heart, but that is rather perpetuating the public lexicon of trying to get rid of the ANC-led government.
Look, Paul O'Sullivan in the United Kingdom, in London, he promoted this very odd idea of wanting to destroy our government and to orchestrate an Arab Spring. He does not realize that UK, the United Kingdom, has the greatest investments in South Africa, and they received him like a circus, like a joke. When he uttered words adverse to our President Zuma, accusing President Zuma of stealing, he broke his leg. But he must understand that I have Marissa Christopher as my client. As recently as yesterday in the Kempton Park court, I put to the court no less than 3 times, there is not one iota of evidence from a docket consisting of thousands of pages against Marissa Christopher. He orchestrated the prosecution of Marissa Christopher. We're going back on the 23rd March to argue setting aside the very far-reaching bail conditions. As far as Comrade Phahlane, the Deputy Commissioner of Police, is concerned, the charges which Paul O'Sullivan deposed on an affidavit of corruption is nothing less than nothing more or less than a huge joke. It has no basis whatsoever. The obtaining of the search warrant is illegal. The inviting of the press to a place where a search warrant is to be executed is unlawful. The law in our country is very clear that the intrusion of a person's privacy, if authorized by a warrant, must be done very, very carefully. And the police were obliged to confine themselves within the strict ambit of the authorization, which clearly was not done. Comrade Phahlane must hastily go to court to challenge the lawfulness of the search and the seizure and have it set aside, which will in fact happen. And then Paul O'Sullivan coaching witnesses in a case in which he's a complainant. He's bereft of all knowledge of the law. That's clearly unethical, it's unlawful. He's destroying the credibility of witnesses whom he is coaching personally in a case in which he's a complainant. The man is manifesting the behavior of someone who is seriously bipolar. To go to the United Kingdom, which is the largest investor in our country, benefiting billions from mining and banking, and to call for the UK intelligence to orchestrate an Arab Spring in South Africa was itself the conduct of a person who is bereft from his senses. He's lost his mind.
We missed the opportunity, Advocate Tomar, the opportunity to have Paul O'Sullivan in studio. So just as, I'm not even sure as a gesture of courtesy that the seat is always open for him. He did confirm that he'd be on set, but as you can see, he's declined, or rather changed his mind. I just want to go to the responsibility that IPID had in retaining or maintaining their independence in any investigation. When they give so much unvetted power, it would seem, to Paul O'Sullivan, the deputy, or rather the acting police commissioner, saying that this compromises the investigation against him completely by virtue of having him being too intrinsically involved in these investigations. What's your view?
Look, Paul O'Sullivan, is a question directed at me? Hello, is the question directed at me?
Correct. Mr. Omar, go ahead.
Look, Paul O'Sullivan, who is acclaimed to be a seasoned investigator, he's displaying a malice which is unrestrained. He's doing this to deflect attention from the own investigation against him. He, Paul O'Sullivan, is himself being investigated for fraud, defeating the ends of justice, malicious prosecution. Why did he conceal his identity when he purchased the house of Radovan Kretschmer? What prompted the prosecution, him orchestrating the prosecution of Marissa Christopher, who has a child from Radovan? It was Marissa's refusing to, in fact, conspire with Paul O'Sullivan against Radovan. And then, using confidential information O'Sullivan obtained in the investigation of Radovan, he went to purchase Radovan's house behind Radovan's back. This is all illegal. And then his attempts to intimidate Marissa. This is a sound basis for intimidation. Paul O'Sullivan's sole pursuit of Comrade Phahlane is to deflect the investigation from him. But, you know, when the whites came to the country the first time, my people asked them, what is the canon? They told them, by and by you will see. So Paul O'Sullivan, my dear friend, by and by you going to be languishing in prison. I hope your leg heals fast. Stop your irregular conduct. You cannot coach witnesses in a case in which you are a complainant. The corruption case you made against Comrade Phahlane is turning out to a big joke. The other case of defeating the ends of justice is even a bigger joke. Read the statement. The allegations do not even satisfy the elements of the crime of defeating the ends of justice. It's so bad that even a lowly paid prosecutor was unwilling to issue a warrant of arrest against Comrade Phahlane. It does not even reveal a prima facie case. But the charges against you, the charges that are coming, will indeed satisfy the elements to have you arrested on a Schedule 6 offense, which you would bear the onus of showing exceptional circumstances to get bail.
Advocate Omar, I really live for that day where both of you and Paul O'Sullivan are in studio, but as you can see, we have a vacant seat there. But simple question, can he be trusted in the IPID investigation against Lieutenant General Phahlane? Not to you, sorry, Advocate Omar, just a response from Swiso.
I will be sitting here on that day, Cindy. When that happens, I will be right here. The reality is all political notion and all political intent is really aggressive in this country. And you see the aggression levels rise further and further for people to become more vindictive and more assaulting as the days go by. Remembering that this is also an election year or election season, leading up to 2019. So all things will crawl out of the woodwork. That is to be expected. This has indeed compromised any investigation. Mr. Phahlane made a statement and said the media knew that the police were going to raid his house before he knew about it. I wonder who tipped the media off on that one. Yet something was never found in his house. That was just to intimidate the man on something. So this investigation is now indeed a farce because the head of IPID is involved. How is then IPID independent? It's called the Independent Directorate, but it's not that independent anymore. This has become a tag team of two individuals who have certain vendettas against people, particularly when McBride was still in the force, when he was still in the East Rand as the commissioner there, and there's still people who you remember those officers who took pictures of him when he was caught drunk. And so there's a lot of gripe and there's a lot of people to be dealt with. So this is perhaps retribution for those. It's justice. So it doesn't have the country at heart. It's not to deal with delivery or deal with the issues of safety and security, but it's to deal with ancient enemies. And it's doing that at state resources. That is the unfortunate part.
And with Paul O'Sullivan in the center of it all, of course, playing for the winning team, I suppose. I mean, even with the emails that he's been sending to the center manager or the estate manager where he says omit certain evidence, like CCTV and photos when you submit to the IPID investigator who is a Mr. Mahlangu.
Remember how unceremoniously he left his office within the East Rand. Remember the charges and the pictures. So there's a lot of gripe. And perhaps this is coming as a political assault because he expected, well, in the first place, we must be clear that he received immunity, with the time of Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the commission
TRC,
that was
yeah.
the TRC. So he was forgiven for those, but there's still a lot of issues because he felt he was not protected by the ANC. He was not protected by his friends or in the law enforcement agencies, and this is a way to deal with them and to get back at them.
All right, we're going to go to our correspondent, Hashim Poza, who was at Paul O'Sullivan's office today, and this is an email or rather communication between our guest relations office and the crew that was sent out this afternoon to go to Mr. Paul O'Sullivan's office. Of course, he then declined and chased them away. And Hashim, just in your 10 years or so, in your illustrious career as a photojournalist, have you ever had such disdain or treatment from any subject or guest?
To me, it's embarrassed to me because after so many years doing the same job and getting confirmation like the same guy today, last time I remember I was interviewed the same person, but today he refused me to go and interview the same guys.
And the rationale behind that, as you're saying that there has been confirmation and you rock up there and he declines for an interview, any particular reason?
He never gave us any reason. He just only said to me, can you use the previous footage that you have about him? And then, which is to me was not related to the today's story, and which is we need the other side of him, because the media is free. You have to be free to talk to us. Sometimes we have to have security guys to be coming to us and asking us, what do you want here? And then to me, I feel that there is something that behind the scene, I don't know what is, but the guy said to me, it's a dinner time, we must leave him alone with the family.
All right, Hashim, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks indeed for your time. And Mr. O'Sullivan was a regular guest here, before our time. So hopefully we can rekindle that relationship where he'll attend our debates. But Siso, we're going to have to leave it there.
Well, he hadn't been found, and he hadn't been accused of all the things that are coming into the picture now. And often when politicians have scandals or people like him, they expect, because they've been to the studio, that you mustn't expose or you mustn't report. Journalists don't make stories, they just report on them. And Mr. O'Sullivan is not immune to that.
Okay, definitely. There's no holy cows. Thanks. That's Sfiso Matlango, our ANN7 resident political analyst. And we had Advocate Zahir Omar, constitutional lawyer, on the line. And Hashim Poza is our video photographer here at ANN7. For myself, we'll take a quick ad break. We'll see you shortly.